The Rant Podcast is brought to you by CubsInsider.com. Welcome to The Rant. Welcome, everyone, to The Rant. I'm John Furlease with my co-host, Evan Altman, and we are it's been a little while since we've done a show, and quite a bit has happened, which I'm not really used to that the last few years. And so that's great. We have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, like and good, like not just I assume you're talking about the monster move to sign backup catcher Carson Kelly, right? That's
Absolutely
the real
mind-bogglingly good move. I mean, really shores up the catcher position for the Cubs in, really I think he was the last eligible catcher that could be signed that wasn't a minor leaguer.
Yeah, but the thing was, like, he's actually, if you look at the guys, like if you think, I mean, it was really the top three on the market were him, Danny Jansen, and Kyle Higashioka, right? So it's like that was like Kelly was kind of and he was probably the third of that trio. And I think the Cubs did actually try for Danny Jansen. And the interesting part about that, and I don't know if he's counting on kind of a bounce back or what with Jansen, that is, because I mean, the Cubs tried to trade for him last year. He was one of them that they wanted to get. And then he kind of didn't have a great season and turned down apparently multi-year offers or bigger offers to end up going to Tampa. So I don't know, again, if he's banking on more of a bounce back or what. I think they were in on him, but but what's so funny to me, and the I don't know if it's ironic, but in response to our reporting on it or whatever, not really reporting, but just writing about it, right? That he was close. Everybody's freaking, oh God, this is all the Cubs do every year, which, can we talk about how broken people's brains have gotten to where it's like, I get that the Cubs aren't pursuing guys at the top of the market, but it pisses me off to no end that everybody's like, they're so cheap. Like, dude, they got a tax penalty this year. You might not be happy with the way they've allocated that money.
Yeah.
But they're not cheap. Cheap teams do not pay luxury tax. Every team has to have backup catchers. And I've got news for you, folks. Most teams do not carry two big money starter type catchers, right? Everybody's got to have backups. That's how it works. And the Cubs seem to do that every year. Why? Because backup catchers generally don't get 5-year contracts. They usually are short-term guys. That's how this works. So, but the irony of it is that everybody, when the move was kind of announced as being really close, everybody's bitching about, oh, this is all the Cubs do. And the funny part is they only finalized the Kelly signing because they had to free up a 40-man spot, which they did with the trade for one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball over the last several years, in Kyle Tucker. So it's just really funny to me that they're like, this is all they do. They never make big moves. And the reason they were able to clear the space was because they made what is clearly the biggest move, whether it be a signing or a trade, that they've had since probably Yu Darvish. I mean, if we're talking about like the kind of impact, kind of the name, all that stuff, it's got to be, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, definitely the biggest offensive offensive trade that they've made. I can't even remember the last time.
There's no, they have not brought, I mean, we could argue, like, everybody wants to go back and relitigate the Jason Hayward thing and talk about how the Cubs vastly overpaid and all this. And I will always counter with, at the time, Hayward was by far the number one position player in the free agent market that season, that offseason, and had $200 million offers from both the Cardinals and the Nationals. So, like, the Cubs weren't even the biggest bidder for his services. So if we look at it that way, like, it's the biggest position player move, one way or the other, they've made since. And again, I'm not saying that, I'm not equating Kyle Tucker to Jason Hayward. Tucker is a far more accomplished offensive player. And he's even got a Gold Glove. And so, but in terms of like the cachet, right? And again, Yu Darvish, one of the top pitchers in that market. But as far as adding from the outside in one way or another, be it signing or trade, I would say the biggest move they've made since Anthony Rizzo offensively to bring in a guy from outside the organization.
Yeah, and I mean, even at the time, like the Anthony Rizzo trade, what you didn't really know, right? Like I think he played a little
He
bit.
came up, he came up with the Padres and kind of sucked.
He wasn't raking. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't look at it like this, right? Like, I mean, like that's where I say, like, in terms of like bringing an offensive player on in a trade, I'd have to go back really far. Before
Sammy
the Rizzo,
Sosa.
because
And even then, Sosa,
yeah, he
in hindsight, he wasn't that. He was a speed guy.
Yeah. He didn't have the power. I mean, that built up.
Not hitting 60 home runs in like whatever it was, 3 or 4 straight seasons, and becoming just mind boggling. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about, and that's what like. And here's the thing that I think is interesting with this, and I'll shut up because I don't know if there's a place I want to go with this, but I don't know that we want to necessarily kick off the show with it, or if you want me to run wild with it.
Let's do it, man.
So here's the thing that I think, right? Because we're about a month out from Cubs convention, which we need to talk with the Cubs about. But I'm really interested because I know like everybody's like, oh, his agent's already said he won't sign it. Like, yeah, no shit, dude. But no agent's gonna come out and be like, yeah, he's super stoked to just he wants to sign a team-friendly deal right out of the gate. Like, of course they're gonna say he wants to test free agency. Why? Because then he wants to get the Cubs to pay up more, right? Like if they want to buy him out of that. But I'm interested to see because Houston's been very good. And I'm not trying to be derogatory at all about the Astros as a team, organization, fan base, any of that. But the Cubs are different in a lot of regards from a lot of other teams in that sense, as far as the fan base and loyalty and all that stuff. And I'm interested to see, because when you think about this, I mean, this dude is literally in the top 10, definitely 15, maybe top 10 over the course of his career. His first 2 seasons, he played very sparingly. And since 2020, he's been a regular. So in 5 seasons, this dude is easily one of the best 10 to 12 hitters in Major League Baseball in that time. And yet, I will guarantee you, if you took a poll, no one would have him up there, right? Like this dude has flown under the radar because he's got Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman, and for a time, George Springer, and you got Yordan Alvarez. There are multiple players on that team who have much, I would say, Q rating, right, as far as how the public perceives them. Tucker is like an unknown dude. If he's playing for the Cubs during the last 5 years, he's one of the biggest names in baseball, guaranteed. So I'm interested to see, first of all, what the reception he gets. It'll be awesome at Cubs convention, how he feels about that, and then getting to play a summer in Chicago at Wrigley Field, right? And that's part of the reason why. And I could talk for 20 minutes and I won't. That's part of the reason why you take the stab at getting this dude as a quote unquote rental, because of what you can do to recruit him for the next year.
Yeah, and let's just hope that the weather at Wrigley is good enough for him to hit. You know, with Hoyer saying the weather was so bad last year.
I got thoughts on that too. So we'll dive. I could get down to some nitty gritty shit here, and I have on Twitter. But to me, I think that this is a dude who, and like, I don't want to talk about like, hey, you got plucked from obscurity. Like that's not correct. But I know baseball a little bit. I was familiar with Kyle Tucker, but until recently, when I really started like diving into the quality of his career, I didn't realize exactly how good he was. But I mean, we're literally talking about a dude who's we'll say his first 5 seasons, just because again, the first 2 were up and down. Again, he played very sparingly, but since 2020, you look at a 5-year stretch, he's every bit as good as what Chris Bryant was over his first 5 years in the league with the Cubs. Every bit as good. potentially even better, especially when you count 2020 being a very short season. And this past year, Tucker had to go on the 60-day IL, had some issues with his right shin, I believe. And so that limited him to 78 games. So really, he's got like 2 half seasons in there. So really, it's only 4 seasons. His production is right there. He's behind Bryant a little bit in OBP. He's behind in homers, but that's only because he has 700 fewer plate appearances, which is more than a full season. He's over 5 years. So KB, his first 5 seasons, slash 285, 284 with a 385 on base, 516 slug, 383 WOBA, 139 homers. I'm sorry, 139 WRC plus, 138 homers. Tucker, 279 average, so he's about 5 points behind, 358 on base. So again, now we're talking about 27 points, but not terrible. 525 slugs, so he's 9 points higher than Bryant. 373 WOBA, 10 points behind. 143 WRC plus, 4 points ahead. 121 homers, he's 17 behind, but that's in more than a full season's worth of plate appearances. You give him another full season, you're basically adding 30 to that, and he's probably 15, 20 homers ahead of Bryant. I love Chris Bryant. There's not a bigger Chris Bryant fan in this country other than Mike Bryant and maybe Kevin Fiddler. But this is insane. Like, you're taking peak Chris Bryant and putting him on this Cubs team. That's
which is very exciting. And we've said, I think the last podcast we were talking about how the Cubs have to add a power bat. They have to add a power bat. And most people don't think Kyle Tucker when they think of a power bat. But listen, like you said, last year he played in 78 games. He had 23 home runs in 78. That's half a season.
Yeah.
Right. So that's over double that, over 40 home runs over a full season.
Do you know how many? So if we're looking at ISO, raw power, he had a 296 ISO this past season.
Yep.
Only 2 players in Major League Baseball were better than that. Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. That's his OBP, right? So he had last season he had a 408, right? So we said his career was only 350, only 358. Last year he was a 408 on base. You know who the only person higher than that was? Judge and Juan Soto, the only people, right? So I mean, if you look at the people who are around him and you look at historically, like this dude is on par with MVP, like God tier, future Hall of Fame track type dudes. And it's and again, he's overlooked on his own team, but what he has done, I mean, and we're looking at like last year, if you, like you said, he plays a full season. He had 4.2 or 4.1 WAR in 78 games. Like we've said, the Cubs need a 6+ WAR player. They just got one. And PCA could be there. And Dansby Swanson is in that if he plays to his, like this. Again, I'm not saying this one dude, but like I think I talked about it on our last one. It's been a while, but about how with a little more consistency, right? And I think what we saw, like Dansby Swanson just had to have core muscle surgery, right? And like for a hernia. How long was he playing through that? Right. He was nicked up for a while, and we know he was for a while, right? He didn't tell the Cubs about it because he's like my dad dealing with kidney stones, being like, I'm just going to take some Tylenol, until this thing blocks my ureter and I have a UTI, and now I have to get a stent put in and then have this shit blasted. Like, and I've been cursing more than usual, but whatever. But that's the thing. It's like, Dansby, look, you want to be out there every day, but like, dude, if you're hurt, and I get, like, you have surgery, you're gonna be out for a lot longer than just if you got a bum heel or whatever. But I am just so stoked about this move and this dude, and it came together in like 3 days, 4 days. It was like Monday, like, oh, the Astros, Tucker's not untouchable, and then it was like everybody's going, hey, Cubs should get, and then 4 days later they got him. Like, this doesn't happen that way.
We doesn't happen that way.
Right, we build all this stuff up.
Actually, like, it never.
No,
it never
doesn't.
Happens that way.
It doesn't. How many rumors?
Never.
How many rumors do we cover? And everybody gets pissed about it. I'm like, folks, I don't know what you expect me to do this time of year. Like, I'm trying to cover what's out there. Like, these things are being reported, and Jed Hoyer's talked about it, and Carter Hawkins has talked about it. Like, most trade, and this is just the nature of the business. That's not what we do, trying to write about rumors. It's just most of this stuff has not just a kernel of truth, but it could be a whole ass bucket of popcorn. That these talks happen, and Jed Hoyer talked about it falling apart on the 2-yard line, right? This stuff gets a lot of times way down the line and then just falls apart for one reason or another. The fact that this, and I'm not saying the Cubs did it because everybody on social media was talking about it, but it really, I tweeted about this. It feels like we as a collective manifested this,
like willed it to happen.
Yeah, and it did. And usually it's like, man, this should, like, we're all like, oh yeah, Cubs should get Ohtani, they should get Soto, and then but I really, and maybe it's, I've had a couple sips of this old fashioned, so I'm not 3 sheets to the wind. I'm not even I'm not even a quarter sheet to the wind. But I wrote about this last night. I tweeted something about it. But you look at things that Jed, and I know, like, dude, the faith in Jed Hoyer and the Cubs and Tom Ricketts to get an extension done is nil. Like, it does not exist, other than maybe me and a few other people, just because I love to be hurt, right? I love to be disappointed. It is my kink, right? I don't know what it is. I have this terrible disappointment kink when it comes to the Cubs, to the extent that I can look back at some of the things at the quote Hoyer said when he was kind of addressing not pursuing Juan Soto, and the fact that they don't make moves like this, and the fact that they did, and then you look back at his words, you start thinking like, man, I don't know, dude. I really feel like this is the guy that they looked at and identified as
the guy they could build around.
Yes, like the cornerstone. Like, we are willing, and I'm gonna read this right now. This is from Jed Hoyer. There is nothing that precludes us from being involved in those players. Speaking about Juan Soto and dudes at the top of the market, he said, we did organizationally decide not to pursue that one. It doesn't mean in the future we won't, but that was one we didn't. And I know a lot of people, because this is, like on Sunday or Monday in the winter meetings. But I find it very interesting, right? It does not preclude us from being involved. Doesn't mean in the future we won't. And then a couple days later, they go and acquire a quote unquote rental who's maybe going to cost $300, $350, $400 million for an extension or in free agency next season. To me, that wasn't just Jed Hoyer blowing smoke. I really feel like, knowing what we do now, that was kind of foreshadowing. Now, that doesn't mean they get it done. He could be Juan. If Juan Soto turned down a $440 million extension with the Nationals right before he got traded. Now, if they offered Kyle Tucker $440, I think he'd be stupid not to take it. Because what happens if he gets hurt again? Who knows? But anyway, something about the situation and what Hoyer said there, and I won't go through all the Hawkins quotes right now. I have a sense that they have identified Tucker as the dude that they want to keep in Chicago as the star that we've talked about ad nauseum. They must have, because he makes so much sense with this team. It's crazy.
Yeah, he really does. And I mean, you start looking around him and at how you can build around a guy like that. I mean, what's he making? $12 million this year? Is that right?
Well, that's what he made, I think, last year. So they don't, they don't know yet, because this is last year of arbitration. So, but the thing is, like, he's only expected to get like $16 million.
And so you extend him, right? You renegotiate, you pay him more this year. And then you extend him. I mean,
10 years, $360 million. Let's go.
Let's do it.
And
I don't
the thing
see
is,
the Cubs
like,
doing that, but
I don't know, man.
8.
Yeah, but and possibly they'll go, just blow it up, go even higher. But and I do think, like, they would rather go 8-320 and have a $40 million AAV than 10-360. right? And maybe even bump it up. Who knows? Or 8 360. Shit, I don't know. But I like this is just. I mean, imagine getting this dude for $16 million.
Yeah,
right. And
exactly.
that's the thing. That's what a lot of people are overlooking as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's only for 1 year. You're getting a top 10 hitter for $16 million. That's worth a lot. Even if it's just a year. And that's what they're like. I am so ready to start swinging on people who are like, oh, but we gave up Cam Smith. John, I'm going to ask you this. How many hits does Cam Smith have for the Chicago Cubs?
He has no hits, which would be weird if he did.
Right.
Because he's never played for the Chicago Cubs.
He's played 32 minor league games. It seems like a good kid. Came out of the box like home runs in 5 or 6 straight games or whatever it was for the Pelicans. Like, that's awesome. That's great. He was their number 1 draft pick, number 14 overall. But I just got a great 0.01% immaculate grid score by using Braylon Marquez for pitched at least 1 inning or made at least 1 pitching appearance because he didn't pitch 1 inning and only 1 team ever. Because Braylon Marquez only pitched a total of 2/3 of an inning at the last game of the season on the South Side in 2020. Between Braylon Marquez and Brendan Davis, both of whom spent time as a Cubs number 1 prospect, that's all the action they've ever gotten. So and it's, well, what about this? I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm not saying that they all fail. What I'm saying is that prospects are just that. And so if you tell me I'm going to have to risk the possibility that Cam Smith is a dude for even if it's only a year of a literal top 10 hit and maybe better if you look at if we extrapolate last season over a full campaign, I'll do that 6 days a week and twice on Sunday. I feel like what the Cubs gave up was less. I don't feel this. It's less than what Hayden Wesneski, fine. I was pissed about that move in the first place because Scotty Efros is my dude. But and Wisniewski was fine, but he was never as consistent as he wanted. And Issac Paredes, I hated his fit at Wrigley. I didn't like the move. I understood it. Better, higher floor than what Morel was providing. But Paredes was not going to do anything at Wrigley. It just was not good. And I thought from the beginning that it was a good flip. Dude, give me all day. I will take this. So anyway, I'm getting fired up about it, but
you're excited. You're excited, and you should be excited because it's been a while. It's been a while.
Do it I feel like Jed's doing this to save his job. Fuck yeah, he's doing it to save his job.
Yeah, of course he is.
He doesn't have a job after this year right now.
And it just so happens that saving his job correlates directly to Cubs winning baseball games, which makes us happy.
Right. And I just what I love, the funny thing is everybody's like, Hoyer needs to get more aggressive. He's got to do something better. He can't just keep doing this. Oh shit. No, I didn't mean that. Don't do that. It's like, what do you guys want?
Everyone's fine. I mean, anytime, that's what prospects are there to improve the team.
Yes.
The big league team, right? I mean, that's
Cam
what
Smith's
they're there for.
7.
Whether they're the ones doing it. Cam Smith wasn't going to crack the big league lineup for at probably 2 years at least.
Everybody's like, he's going to be your third baseman of the future. Like, folks, he's played 32 games in the minors. I
feel better about Matt Shaw.
I love, and that's part of the thing for me is there's a very large percentage of people that don't feel like Shaw can play third base. I'm like, I don't know, man. I saw him playing that Premier 12. I heard Mike Scioscia talk about how much improvement he made, and I feel like he's got that ability. But Shaw is a dude who, I say this right after I came off of saying Cam Smith only played 32 games. Shaw's obviously played more than that, but I feel way more strongly about Matt Shaw than I do about Cam Smith. And I truly believe maybe he doesn't end up there for the bulk of his career, but I believe Matt Shaw can hold up. They let Chris Morel play third base for most of the first half. I'm pretty sure Matt Shaw can play as good a defensive third base as what Chris Morel did in his time in Chicago.
There's no doubt.
And I'm sold on the bat. So give me that. Give me. I mean, you're telling me effectively what you've done, and especially if they trade Bellinger, which I think they will and should. Kyle Tucker's a big upgrade, and I can get into the real nitty gritty on this if we want to, over Cody Bellinger, and his fit at Wrigley is significantly better than Bellinger's has been to this point.
Well,
And I think Shaw's an upgrade over Issac Paredes. So boom.
yeah, so that's really, to me, the more, well, not more interesting, but it adds to the intrigue and the interest of the trade for Kyle Tucker in terms of the domino effect, which we're going to have to see play out because we really don't know what it's going to be because the Cubs still have Bellinger. And I mean, Suzuki, he's just the DH? Like, he's not playing in the field? Like,
I mean, at this point, because and I think, unless they kind of flip some stuff around and then somebody's like, oh, he's going to demand a trade if he's a DH. Like, I know what his agent said, man. Again, we got to be smart about how we're doing this, right? But I do think that what we've got here is a deal where they got to figure out a way to keep him, make him happy, figure this out, because with that right-handed bat, again, and the funny thing is, like, I get it, dude. You want to play in the field, but like his numbers were better as a DH, because I think, and that's what's, and I don't know if his agent, Joe Wolf, if he's protecting, say, his ego or what it is, but like, dude was lost half the time. Like, he's a freaking space cadet out there in right field.
He's not.
Looks like he's picking dandelions and chasing butterflies. And to me, I'm like, if your mind is not, if your brain is just like, oh shit, I just made this terrible play and now I'm, he had like a 150 WRC plus. He's the Cubs' best in the last 2 years combined. Bellinger was better in 23. Seiya was better in 24, but overall Seiya is better. He's been their best hitter the last 2 years, and he's been much better when he's a DH. If you can retain him, if you can work through this with him, hey, you get to play a little right field. We'll rotate that DH spot a little bit, put Tucker in there sometimes, put Bush maybe in there, whatever. That is a very, very potent combo. And the lineup, again, is significantly better, and it's more balanced, especially because you have, against a righty, you're going to have 3 left-handed hitting outfielders, regularly. I want, because everybody's talking about, oh, you got to trade Suzuki now. And it's like, I know, like, he's the best. But what team, I guess here's my thing. He doesn't want a DH. So what team is trading for him to be their right fielder? How bad is your current situation at right field that you want to take this guy who routinely just biffs fly balls and line drives?
His defensive score was minus 10.8.
Yeah. That
was worse than Morel
regularly.
So if you didn't like Morel, listen, at the end of the day, he's gonna do what the Cubs tell him to do because they're paying him to play. And if he's going to be a DH, by God, he's going to be the DH. And to be honest with you, it makes the most sense. Like, keep him at DH all year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's his position. That's what he does, and that's what he's going to keep doing. And he'll go in there and he'll rake. And like you said, I mean, you've got the right-handed bat, you've got Tucker with the lefty, you've got Happ that hits from both sides of the plate, you got Bush who's a lefty, and then you got Swanson that's a righty, Armstrong,
Warner's right, PCA's left.
Yeah, so you got a lot of versatility there.
Matt Shaw's right-handed, Miguel Amaya's right-handed. I mean, you balance that out, but it's just it's a significant upgrade, and a lot of people did it. It was wild to me that somebody was like, just keep Bellinger, he's the same as Shaw, or I mean, sorry, this the same as Tucker. It'd be the same thing when we were talking about, when it was all hypothetical. It's like, folks, I don't think you really understood. Like, first of all, this ain't Cody Bellinger from rookie year, second year, like MVP. Yeah, like, he was good a couple years ago, and it wasn't bad. Like, Bellinger's not bad. I want to make sure we're clear on this. But the thing is, and this is what I've been harping on the whole time, this is what concerned me a great deal about re-signing him, about giving him what in the end was a deal. Like, the Cubs did not want him to opt back in, right? Like, I think we can be pretty clear on that. They, of course, can't come out and say that, but like, They didn't want that. And the issue is, and this is the whole thing that red flagged me badly, was just his batted ball numbers are not good. And a lot of people, well, that's because with 2 strikes. Yeah, like I get that, right? But he's not taking half his swings with 2 strikes, right? Like this is an overall when we put this thing together. But if you look at it, and I think, and I'm gonna hopefully be close here, but there were 264 players that took at least 500 swings that were tracked by StatCast. And the major league average swing speed is around 71.5 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And Cody Bellinger is at nice 69 miles an hour. So it's 2.5 below the league average. And that's like out of 264, that's like 229th. Right. So he's like close.
And this
to the
isn't new,
of the
though. This isn't new.
No,
I mean, he's been there for a while.
Right. It's been a couple years. Interestingly enough, Issac Paredes is like 68.5 miles an hour. He's like 244. Like he's literal 4th percentile exit velocity, which is different from swing speed, but swing speed creates, right? The swing is much, because, you know, a lot of times people are like, oh, dude's throwing 100, just get your bat on it. Let the pitch do the work. Like, that's actually not true. So when we look at rough numbers here, the pitch velocity accounts for it, the multiplier is 0.2 if we're looking at exit velocity. This is max exit velocity, whereas swing speed is 1.2, right? So we're talking about 6 times as important to exit velocity, swing versus pitch. And so when you look at Bellinger's exit velocity, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 88.5. It's somewhere in there. And Tucker is like 71.8. I'm sorry, 91.8. So like Tucker's it's like 3.3 miles an hour better average exit velocity. That doesn't sound like a lot. 3.3 miles an hour is pretty slow when you look at it that way. But when you consider that each mile an hour of exit velocity is worth somewhere between 4 to 6 feet of ball travel, let's say 5 times 3.3. Now we're talking about 16 feet on average. Every Kyle Tucker batted ball is going to go 16 feet farther than Cody Bellinger. And when we're talking about wind,
well, when you put it that way, why are you being so like practical about this? You know, numbers you were applying, and
it's crazy, right?
This
16 feet's a long ass way. And when you talk about that basket at Wrigley, that's a ball that dies in the middle of the warning track and one that makes it to the basket. Right. And so those are the things that when you look at it, and they're both left-handed hitters, so we can put those together. It's just those things, and I will guarantee you that's something the Cubs were very well aware of, right? In doing this and being willing to spend what they did. And that's why I say, like, it's a massive upgrade. I mean, not only is he younger, not by much, but like 3 years, and that's pretty significant when you're talking about an overall commitment to somebody. And the fact that he's got a Gold Glove in right field, and I mean, so does Cody Bellinger, right? So that's kind of a wash, but he's younger. He's got more power. And again, he's right now entering his prime versus Bellinger being in the middle of it or possibly past based on some of the injuries that he's had, particularly with the shoulder. And so there is nothing not to love about this outside of the potential limited duration. And even then, I look at a team that blew something like 26 saves, that had so many losses that were preventable, that had multiple players with just startling splits from first to second half, right? That you could easily, in my opinion, and this is right because I say easily, this is not very objective, add 10 wins to what they got. I think that was last year should have been a 90-plus win team without having to really finesse a whole lot. I don't have to say like, well, if these 5 things had gone differently, I'm like, if you had just spent a little bit more money on the bullpen and had a couple of these dudes not suck in the first half, it's over. Just don't have a really, really crappy month in one of these, and
Well,
it's
and they
it's a
speaking
vastly
of the
different
bullpen,
story.
they've got a lot of work left to do in the bullpen, I think.
Agree.
They signed Matthew Boyd, which is the biggest head scratcher. I mean, like you go and you get a guy like Kyle Tucker, and it's like genius, and then you sign a guy like Matthew Boyd, and it's like, huh? Like, where does he fit in?
I'm kind of like I'm actually not upset. Well,
He's
I feel
another
like it'll make
left-handed pitcher.
it'll make a ton more sense if they for the love of Christ, they better not go get Jesus Luzardo, especially if they're giving up James Triantos or Owen Casey. And again, I understand how hypocritical that may sound when I say about Cam Smith, but the Cam Smith deal involved a guy who's a top 10 hitter in baseball. Jesus Luzardo is like hurt all the time. He's got back problems. He's never really had an outstanding season. I don't see that at all. But the Boyd thing is like you're looking at a dude who kind of in the mold of Walker Buehler, like is right in that same right. Been hurt a lot, has been up and down with his results, but ended last season or this past season, whatever you want to say, really strong. Has the potential, if he can stay healthy, which he hasn't proven his ability to do, can be a very solid number 4, if not even higher. I think it makes a ton more sense. If I dig the Luis Castillo idea. If they're able to get him to waive his no trade and come over from Seattle, that'd be pretty cool. I still like the idea of Buehler, right? I like the idea of Shane Bieber before he re-signed in Cleveland. So if they upgrade that number 5 over what now appears to be Javier Assad or possibly Jordan, probably not Jordan Wicks because they don't need to have 4 lefties in there necessarily. Although Garrett Crochet, I would have dug that. Like, is there a big move out there that then you're basically making Boyd your 5, and if he's hurt, you've easily got depth to fill that spot? I'm cool with it, but it is a little bit weird that was like their first move of the season, the offseason.
Yeah. And then what are they going to have? 3 left-handed starters now?
Right now, yeah. And that's the only, and that's why I kind of like the Crochet thing before obviously the Red Sox went and got him. And everyone's like, you can't have 4 lefties. And it's like, well, Garrett Crochet is a vastly different pitcher from the other 3. Like the Cubs have 3 kind of like low 90s guys, right? Boyd is in that same with Shota and with Justin Steele, where it's like 91, 92, maybe 93, and Crochet's like 96, 97, different arm slot, and actually has reverse splits. And that's the thing I think people don't pay attention to. They just look at him being a lefty, and it's like, yeah, but if your pitch mix and your style is such that you're actually better against right-handed hitters, I'm not saying it's the same thing as having a righty, but it's very different because all the other 3, Boyd and Steele and Imanaga, all have traditional splits. They're all better against lefty batters, right? But Crochet was better against righty batters. So I would see that. So I think that's something you really have to weigh pretty significantly, which is, again, the thing with Luzardo that doesn't make much sense to me. But I don't know. Castillo would be great. Don't really like the 3 years of remaining control if he continues to kind of backslide a little. But there again, like who's out there, right? What are you going to do? But I do think that if I'm talking Luis Castillo in a bubble, different. But Luis Castillo versus Javier, and Javier Assad's been fine. But if you could tell me like you're going to get Luis Castillo to be your 4 or 5, hell yeah, dude, sign me up. Let's go. Like all of a sudden, and then go get Kirby Yates, right? Spend some money on the bullpen or something like that. A big time strikeout dude who can get in there and who's got save, or the other one, I wanted Jordan Romano. He's gone. I still like Kyle Finnegan. I don't know. Maybe he's already gone too. Dude with closing experience, right? Solidify that bullpen. Give Craig Counsell something where he knows that he doesn't have to spend the first 3 months of the season figuring out who the hell is going to work the 7th, 8th, and 9th. Get 5 or 6 competent, really strong starters. Look, man, it's not just on Tucker, but if you shore up those other areas on the pitching staff, and now you look at what could be with that lineup, I'm feeling
You're feeling
really,
good. You're
really
feeling
good.
good about 90 wins.
Yeah, I really
Especially
am.
in their division.
Yeah, because the Cardinals are getting worse. They're spinning off their dudes.
Yeah.
The Pirates aren't pushing the gas pedal on what they've like. They got some
Reds are
studs.
the
But like,
Reds,
yeah, like
and
what are they?
the Brewers feel like they're due for a down year.
And they just lost Devin Williams, and that does the fight. The NL Central got weaker, is what I tweeted when they happened. Well, he didn't really play most of the season. I'm like, okay, yeah, but he's still not there, right? Like, I get it, and they got tons of devil magic, but to remove one of the game's best closers from even that possibility, I mean, at some point they've got to slow down, right? Like they get rid of Josh Hader, they just get better. Devin Williams has a broken back, they just keep winning, and like at some point it's got to stop. So I like this to be that year. Or so I will pray. Let's manifest that like we did the Tucker deal.
Yeah. And so the Cubs ended up non-tendering Mike Tauchman, Nick Madrigal, Adbert Alzolay, Brennan Davis, former number 1 prospect, and Patrick Wisdom.
How could they give up on him? What if he ends up being great?
And I don't even know. Did anyone pick him up?
I don't think so.
They did. It would have been in a minor league deal, but and so those are some pretty significant names. Like those are some guys that have been, especially when you talk about Alzolay, Davis, and Madrigal. Wisdom. Time to move on from him. Tauchman, I think, was kind of a surprise as well, and so but it's good to see them kind of cleaning out their closet, so to speak, and making room for some of these young guys to come up. And so I think it makes it from at least from the position player perspective pretty interesting, like to see what's going to happen this coming year, particularly with a bat like Tucker in there, and PCA, what's he going to do? I mean, I think that could be real fun for sure. Because it feels like he really started hitting well there towards the last month or two of the season last year, and so there's a lot of things that we can be very excited about. And I mean, it's December 14th, right? I mean, like there's a long way to go in this off season, and a lot of moves the Cubs probably are still going to make. And so I don't know. Like I think there's a lot to be excited about here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right? Like they have now, and that's the other thing about the Tucker deal, right? Is it feels certainly not like John Lester, but in that vein of, okay, we're strapping on the big boy pants now, right? Like we're gonna go for it. And now if they extend him, that would be akin to and the John Lester deal, right? Of like, okay, the Cubs are here to play again. You take that a couple different ways, but it's definitely it's exciting. It's the first truly exciting on a broad scale. Not like, hey, I'm this giant baseball nerd, and they picked up this pitcher who's kind of unknown, but does this one thing that if they can really get him to figure it out, could maybe possibly be a dude at some point, right? Like you got in the past, we've kind of had to like convince ourselves, or I have at least, that some of these moves are really solid for them. This is the first thing they've done at a major league level in the last several years that is worthy of excitement. And there was it was great. There were a bunch of people who I saw, like one or the other kind of, I don't know. And so, some dude's like, yeah, sometimes I get a little concerned about this or this, but then I remember that they just traded for Kyle Tucker, and then I get happy again. I'm like, hell yeah, dude, that is the outlook to have.
Yeah.
They just added a top 10 bat. Let's go. Like, let's worry about the future in the future. Let's be excited. Let's enjoy this. How many times, like, some people are totally stuck in like, they're just going to pan everything the Cubs do, right? Because they just want to be angry. They just wake up in the morning and piss in their own Cheerios. Not somebody else's, their own. And then they'll eat it and be like, this tastes like piss. It's like, yeah, dude, like that's what happens when you're just bitter all the time. Just take a moment, right, to enjoy the Christmas spirit and the Cubs giving us this gift of
Exactly.
player.
Tis the season.
Yeah, tis the freaking season. Let's go. Let's
And
be
so
Clark Griswold. Let's be unabashedly positive for
let's
just
watch
5 minutes.
Christmas Vacation. And I'm looking at the 40 man right now. Like Matt Mervis is still on the 40 man. I mean, I don't know that he's going to stay there. There's some people on the 40 man. I don't know what's going to happen with Master Boney.
How is he still on the roster, by the way? Like,
yeah, I
what?
don't know. Yeah, and so those are the obvious ones. And then the Cubs signed Gage Workman. Good old Gage Workman. Well, they picked him up from the Rule 5 draft.
But he's on the roster for now.
And he's on the roster, and it's just like, was this just a waste of money? Like, it's not my money. I mean, some of it might be, but and at the end of the day, they had to pay $100,000 to where did he come from? But the Tigers.
The Tigers, yeah. I mean,
they had to pay him $100,000 or something like that.
They got to pay it to the Tigers, and they'll have to.
Yeah, they get the right of first refusal or something like that. And
and I know he's a third baseman, and it's kind of like it feels like providing depth at that spot, knowing that they were going to make this move or wanted to.
But he's a double-A guy. I mean, he hasn't
for like 3 years,
big leagues.
Yeah, for like 3 years, and pretty big strikeout numbers. They reduced a little bit, but like I think if I'm recalling, I'm not looking this up, but like 27.8%, I think this year at Double-A, but was at like 40% a couple years ago. But still, not gonna like. That's the dude you're leaning on to be like, oh, okay, you're gonna be our backup for Matt Shaw at that spot right now. Let's do something else. I don't know, but hey, $100,000, which back when Carl Yastrzemski got it, people were like, no baseball player is worth that much, and now you pay $100,000 to pick up some dude at Double-A on the Rule 5, right? It's changed. $765 million has kind of reset things, but I don't know. I feel like it was just more one of those flyers. I don't want to say shocked. I'll be pretty surprised if he makes it to the beginning of the season still on the 40-man roster.
Me too.
The moves that they'll make, but it feels like one of those. We're like, hey, we're really trying.
He's got to be on the 26-man. Well, that's just the 40-man.
The active, yeah. So, that's right. So, let me rephrase that. Then I will be shocked because I'm backing myself up because like, why? Like, what is?
That's the thing that's really shocking to me is it wasn't so much. I mean, if it was just like him being on the 40-man, yeah, you can see that kind of sticking around. But I mean, keeping him on the 26-man, that's where it becomes, because to move him down off the 26-man, I believe he has to go through waivers.
Yeah, he does, and then the Tigers can get him back. But if based on what I was just, he wasn't protected. Based on some of those other things, I think the chances are pretty good that he gets through waivers and they can keep him. I would imagine, right? And so now that provides.
You think so, but you don't know. I mean, maybe Detroit wants him back. I have no idea.
Something tells me. Who knows, right? Who knows?
Room for him there. I mean, if they get him back, I don't know if they have to keep him on their 40-man.
Like, I don't think they do because then he got it's waivers, right? But they got to pay like $10,000 or something like that to get him back. I know the rules have changed slightly, but it's still like I really when I write that stuff up, like when the Cubs pick up a dude on a minor league deal, when they do a Rule 5 pick, rare though it may be, and I know they got a knuckleball guy in the minor league phase of that I didn't even write up. It's been kind of hectic, but I do my best to look at these things from the eye of, okay, there's a reason they acquired this guy, right? Which again, a ton of fans, especially on Facebook,
there's got to be a reason.
The reason they acquired him is because he's cheap. That's what people say. It's like, okay, dumbass. Like, yes, that's why they did it. Oh, yes, because they just wanted to add another player with limits on your organizational overall roster, like 180 or whatever. Yes, they just went out and got a guy specifically because he's cheap. No, they're scout. They have so much data, so many scouts looking at these things, just scouring through them. there's something they saw. And yeah, I mean, this kid has a little pop. He's maybe he can really pick it at third base. I don't know. That's tough to really discern. Clearly haven't watched him play. Looking at, StatCast and Baseball Reference doesn't really tell you much. And so it's possible, but I feel, again, it feels like, hey, they got rid of Morel. They just got rid of Paredes. So your depth at third base, assuming they will get rid of Mastroboni, Wisdom is gone. Madrigal is gone. So all these, that right there is at least 4 guys who have played a vast majority of your third base innings over the last 2 to 3 seasons that are gone. And so building back some depth organizationally at that position is fairly important, even though, and got rid of Cam Smith, right? So there's, even though he hasn't played there yet, that's more. So to me, it's like, hey, it's $100,000 flyer, which is nothing. It's a lottery ticket on a guy. We pass him through waivers. If he makes it through, we've got more depth at that position in Iowa or Tennessee or whatever. And so that, to me, that's probably all it is, because there's no way they can legitimately be projecting this guy to give him innings at the major league level.
Yeah. Well, if anything, I think we've got way more to talk about than we normally do. And so that's kind of exciting. I mean, it feels like, it does feel like Christmas. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I think going into these, it'll probably, who knows, right? I mean, it could be quiet over the next couple of weeks. It could not be quiet, but we'll see what happens. But I think looking forward to future episodes, maybe try to do it. I mean, I was traveling, so that's why we haven't done one in about 3 or 4 weeks. I think 4 weeks maybe. But we'll try to get back on a more regular schedule, maybe every couple of weeks. We can get a show in probably, I would guess, around between Christmas and New Year's, maybe.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I got a lot of PTO coming up. I got nothing else to do.
There you go. Yeah, sitting around, get on the podcast real quick. And hopefully we have something to talk about. If nothing happens over the next 2 weeks, we might not do it. So we'll
just come back here and talk more about Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, we could do that. Maybe something will have changed. I doubt it, but definitely a lot to look forward to for spring training coming up. I think that's going to be exciting and fun, and it's cool that we don't have to sweat like we have every season, every off season. It seems like, you're just waiting for that big move to happen, and it just never really happens. And then spring training starts. And yeah, I mean, I guess when the Cubs signed Bellinger, that was probably one of the biggest moves that they've made in a long time. But this to me, like, to your point, is a much more legitimate move that should put them in a really good place this year. And hopefully, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we find out that the Cubs have extended Kyle Tucker and signed him to a multi-year contract as the centerpiece of their team. That would feel great. That would give us something more to talk about. So
I dig it.
We'll see if that transpires. But until then, it's been good. It's been good getting back together with you and spending some time, just kind of, it's like the deep breath moment, where you're like, I feel like real. You're not. No, hoping the Cubs can do well.
Yeah, well, I like yesterday when all this was going down, there were some other things. There were some rumor posts, and I wrote, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5. I could look at it, and I know Cantor had a piece that went up that I got out there late. But I think so. Look at post on 12/13. Holy crap! Oh, okay, so we go back. So I wrote a piece. Danny Rocket had a San Ranto show. Then Cantor had a piece about some rumors, again, Kyle Tucker. And then I had the piece about Kyle Tucker. Then I had a brief one about Carson Kelly. And then I wrote another thing about Kyle Tucker. And then there was a rundown. So, like, I wrote and published 1, 2, 3, 4. Holy shit. 4 pieces. I wrote like several thousand words yesterday, which I don't know if everybody understands how much that is. While also, like, I was in the tattoo chair when the Tucker news broke, so I couldn't really write about it at the time, and I had to drive home and kind of be manic in terms of getting that out there. And then my son and I went to a movie. So it's like all this stuff I'm doing, and it's kind of nice. I'm like glad they haven't done anything, because I really still think they're going to trade Bellinger pretty soon here. But I'm glad that hasn't happened, because I tell you what, like, and it's interesting because I still haven't had anybody take me up, like the people who turn into real assholes on, especially on Facebook. And I'm like, all right, here's your challenge. You know, give me a 500-word article on the topic of your choosing. I'll go ahead and put it out there. Not once has anybody ever done that, and most of them don't even respond after that point, because they know damn well they couldn't do it. That's 500 words, and I don't want to go back and look at it, but I would guess I was somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000 words yesterday. Which is like a lot if you've ever written stuff. Like, that's a lot. And I'm not trying to like it's kind of mentally exhausting, even though it's fun when the topics are good like that. So I'm just asking the Cubs not to do anything for like the rest of the weekend. So just sort of sit back. You know, I think they've done enough. Rest, Jed. God rested for a day.
Yeah.
You can take two. Right.
Hopefully they do something before Christmas, or a couple things would be my hope. And I'd be really surprised if they don't. I mean, like Juan Soto, the Crochet trade, like those things really opened up the market and made it so that things can really start happening much more quickly than they have in, the last couple of off seasons. And so it feels like the Cubs can really be in a good place. They are in a good place, but can really be like more selective and kind of perfecting the roster instead of trying to figure out core pieces of the roster going into January.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a nice feeling. So, all right. Well, great. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's been a good show, and we will circle back with you in a couple of weeks or so. And until then, have happy holidays, and thanks for joining us.
See you.
That's it.